President Young.
Here.
Secretary Spikers.
Here.
Commissioner Herron.
Here.
Commissioner Powell.
Here.
May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there any discussion, additions, or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, then we'll move forward. We will be moving to take a vote.
Robert's Rules of Order would say unless there's an objection to the agenda, you can move forward as the chair without a vote.
Okay.
Otherwise, you could, take a vote.
Sorry.
I did. All righty. We are now going to move to executive session pursuant to RCW 4230 to discuss and review a personal matter estimated to take approximately 30 minutes. So we will adjourn and be back in about 30 minutes. Well, actually, we're not going. Everybody else is staying here. Yeah, we're staying here.
Yep.
Hearing none, I will move to, we will vote. All those in favor of approving those, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Jean, did you vote?
Yeah, I meant to say aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it's unanimous for both those. Now we have communications. I guess the only communications I've had, that I don't generally talk about are emails from the public. And we have had some emails from Sue, Mackie, and also Ryan Mueller. So I have had some communication with both of them. I don't think there's anything that I could really, that's necessary to share here. I think other people have also seen this.
It's been an hour and a half or two with Vernon.
And I sent him an email also,
Yeah.
so, and I didn't go into it. So. Yeah, so there is a little bit of communication going on with the public. And one thing that I said to Ryan that I'm going to let everybody know is that we have made efforts to try and get the community involved, and we haven't been able to do it. And it's nice that there's two people, and I'm glad that they have an opinion and they're sharing it. But we need more than those two people. So I don't know how we do that in the position we are, but that was my essence of what I had to say. All right, CEO, Tom Harper.
Thank you. You have my report in your packet, and I will go through that as I usually do. First topic is disaster relief. Our hearts go out to all those along the Gulf Coast and in the Caribbean who have and continue to suffer from the devastating storms that hit that region. While we continue to serve the people of our community, we could not see their need without acting on our compassion for our fellow citizens in a dire time of need. I've informed our employees that Snoqualmie Valley Hospital would match up to $20 any donation they make to the American Red Cross during the month of September with a total match limit of $1,000. And we have had a nice response, and I expect more coming along from our staff. With respect to the affiliation strategy, since our last board meeting, we received a proposal in response to our RFP, as you all know. The proposal from Regional Health has been through an initial scoring exercise by Commissioners Management and our consultants, and was the exclusive topic of our work study session on August 30th. This evening, our consultants, actually it'll be Sarah, will update us on their work to gather additional information on the next steps in the process. On finance, the financial report will show that July there was net income of $132,000 and unrestricted cash rose to $6.9 million. July was budgeted for a net income of $92,000. Year to date, as of July, the budget calls for net income of $35,000 and our actual is $55,000. Average daily census in July was high. It was 23.9 compared to a budget of 22. The occupancy rate during the month was 96%. Operating expenses were slightly below budget in July and are 3% or $631,000 below budget year to date. I always give a preview, both in Finance Committee and here, of volumes to date. So August inpatient volumes were lower than July, but still above budget at an average daily census of 22.8 or 91% occupancy. Average daily ER visits for August was 11.7, which is down from July, but still higher than our budget of 11. Lab. We had lab was surveyed just last week by the Department of Health. The lab surveys, like the overall hospital surveys, are unannounced and occur every 18 to 24 months. The lab, excuse me for the typo, received recertification with minimal findings. As I mentioned, talk about Bartell drugs. We received very positive initial response from the local manager as well as the area director of care clinics to our request to work together on care coordination. Dr. Wickup and I met with them on August 23rd to provide tours, and we toured there and they toured here, and discuss how to create safe patient handoffs and effective referrals for diagnostic services. We provided referral information and order forms for directing patients to the emergency department as needed, and use of ancillary services including lab, medical imaging, endoscopy, and infusion. Just a comment, I think an interesting part of the visit was when their provider saw Dr. Wickup produce the order form, she was very pleased to see that we had put together a kind of a one-stop shopping for any of the diagnostic testing that they would want us to do for their patients. And finally, King County Search and Rescue, a project we've been working on for some time. We've, I believe, ironed out now all the issues related to insurance on that agreement, and the draft of that agreement. I still say draft because it will come as such to the Facilities Committee on September 25th. And the process is, if the Facilities Committee looks at that and doesn't have any suggested changes to that, then it would come to the board as a recommendation for approval from the Facilities Committee. And that concludes my report, President.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our CEO, Commissioner Pollard?
You mentioned Hurricane Harvey. You didn't mention Florida.
I actually didn't. I didn't refer to either of the hurricanes by name. I just mentioned that it was hard hit the Gulf states and the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, when you just reported, you talked about the Caribbean
and Gulf Coast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we now have Finance Committee. Commissioner Spikers.
There won't be a lot to talk about because it's all good. If we continue on this pace, we could go on indefinitely, but that's a big if. So anyway, we did some great things. The only thing we're down on is clinic volumes and rehab, and those are, for some reason, rehab used to be our best.
It is. What's changed?
Well, we had to transition. Our primary care would not give us, or they cut us out because we were charging too much. They wouldn't give us the referrals, and they wouldn't pay for the people there because of what we were charged. So we adjusted that, and it took several months. And people are trickling. Pardon me?
Is it improving?
It's trickling back. It's good numbers, but it's not what it was. So we're still looking at that.
So how long has it been since we've changed the payer?
6 months. About 6 months. And
that period we've done, but we've seen others.
And I think our volume for our clinics will go up. Jillian Rippey is going to do wonders. I just think that she's got great charisma in her photograph. I didn't mean it, but I saw it. So I think she's going to do wonders for our clinic, and very happy to have her. She just seems like she would be a very pleasant person to go to. So I'm thinking the clinic volume could probably go up, and so we'll be looking for that sometime, probably around the flu season time. When we can really.
She's in ramp up mode right now.
Yeah. So
And we are advertising for in the local paper.
Yeah.
And on Livingston Phone.
So, but we're doing good. Our referrals are great. Above what we thought. Costs are down. I mean, it's the situation where we want to continue for years, but these things change. We're still looking at, my understanding, Steve, is a cost adjustment evaluation here soon.
Yeah.
So we don't know if it's going to be up or down. You should know something.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Well, because I always worry about that. Everything looks rosy, and then we owe $1 million. And so that's,
Price.
and you know, it's not just, it's, or I remember one year when they had to pay us $1.5 million, and they turned around 6 months later and said, you owe us $2 million.
Right.
And so I'm like,
Medicare.
so anyway, I'm waiting. Waiting forever, whatever they say. So we'll see what happens there. I'm optimistic because our expenses are down, and that's a good thing. I think that we're pretty close to the expense limit for reductions, but there might be a couple more. We'll see. We're really close, and the revenues, we still, that's where we need to improve our outpatient revenue. We're doing well, but that's what the future is. So nothing bad, and I'm the person that would alert anybody about a bad thing immediately. So I tell it like it is. So I'm looking at approving, without further questions, of course, but I am going to ask the board to approve the cash disbursements and ask for any questions. And I'd be more than happy from any of the public to answer any of the questions concerning finances as well. So I'm making a motion to for the payable warrants, and totaling $2,209,004.87.
Do I hear a motion? Your motion is second. Is there any discussion? And we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I state. Moving on from.
I have a question.
Oh, yes. Bishop
So we
Pollard.
have to bring into public session, is it true that the finance committee has taken the position?
You talking about me?
Unless things improve within 2 years, the hospital is.
Well, here's the basic scenario.
Yes.
Any discussion that occurs in an executive session is confidential, and that is not to be brought back into public session. That would be inappropriate for any discussion we had in an executive session. So we make a decision on that executive session to bring that back into an open public meeting. That appears to be where this conversation is headed.
If
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wait.
I just want to thank Mr. House for that.
As I understand it, no, that was a comment made prior, actually, to the executive meeting.
That was during executive session.
Okay, all right.
I reviewed my notes.
All right, I'll trust your notes.
Could I ask the question this way, then, based on the report? And that is, it was my understanding of the meeting 2 months ago that you said that the finance committee chair said that we're doing fine and we could continue indefinitely. And
Yeah,
I just want to have that clarified.
If we could continue at this rate, we could continue indefinitely.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure that that's
If we could.
what I understand.
And as everyone all knows, that our depreciation schedule will be reduced year by year by year by year. Therefore, our Medicare reimbursement is reduced per patient day. So I can see where if we're at $3,200 today per patient person, we would be probably more like 3,000 or 3,100 for $3,050 by next year, and $3,000 or $2,950. I mean, that's just a logical guess. So that would be 23 patients times $100 times 365 days. So you figured out it's probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we'd have to make it.
Yeah, of course, that assumes you're not making that aspect. Right, thank you.
Is there any other discussion or questions? Okay, then we will move on to medical committee.
Well, most of the medical committee report has been reported in other people's opinions. Anyhow, there's the mandatory flu vaccination. The mandatory flu vaccinations will begin October 1st. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Exactly. Okay, we are in, the hospital is in process of new replacement IV catheters that are being implemented this month. They will decrease the chance of blood exposure to the employees and increase they're better. Pretty much what I can say. I got my glasses. Okay, and the lab has already been reported on. Biannual bylaws revision. We reviewed details in the summary document. All changes have already received the vote of the medical staff, and they will be requiring ratification by us, the board. We can't make any changes. We are simply going to ratify. And I believe that medical staff, I'm going to let Dr. Whitcop give us a little rundown. She nicely provided us all with the bylaw revisions.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment that, yeah, Dr. Whitcop did provide us more detailed explanation on where some of these changes were made, and so she really enlightened, especially me being new to that was, I think, and she will go further if you have any more questions.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
I think you have the floor, Dr. Rico.
Yes, yeah. So I tried to put together something for you meaningful. So there's a small 5-page packet.
It's just a minute.
Yes, so there's a small 5-page packet, and the first page is titled 2017 Medical Staff Bylaws Revisions. So the quick summary is that about every 2 years we make a point of going through the bylaws, looking for places that need to be updated to reflect changes either in process, changes in regulatory issues that have gone on in the state, and housekeeping items. We always tend to find typos that we missed the last time through. And so you'll see that the changes here, there's several housekeeping changes. Almost all of those are reflecting the fact that my title was changed in the course of these last 2 years. And so my role in the medical staff needs to be reflected with the new title. And then there's some rearranging, some section got relocated to a different section. That's considered a housekeeping item. And then the other change of substance, all the other changes of substance have to do with telemedicine. Telemedicine really is something that we are going to be seeing a lot more in the upcoming years. There's a lot of legislative changes that have been occurring, and so we wanted to prepare our bylaws to reflect telemedicine. So there's a few housekeeping items that are just introducing the definition of telemedicine, but the changes of substance have to do with the issues of that topic. So the summary on the first page, and then if you just go to the second page, these are the changes of substance. So there are 5 different changes of substance, and I will go through them, and I'll go fairly fast, so please feel free to slow me down if you want me to spend more time on anything. So the first change is designated in Article 2, Section 9, and that is where we made some clarification about the fees that will be associated with telemedicine providers. So what we wanted to do was allow the fees to be part of the negotiation that happens in the process of negotiating for telemedicine services, as opposed to having them already be predefined. Depending on who we negotiate with for telemedicine services, there's a variable amount of work that would be done on our side, and variable usually meaning in the downward direction. Some negotiations would mean our work is very minimized, and so we would not feel right in asking for the amount of money that we normally ask for somebody to be credentialed on our staff. The second change of substance is in Article 3, and this is to indicate that if somebody is brought in, if they're a telemedicine provider, that they can only be a participant in the telemedicine category. So the categories are that are currently in existence is the active medical staff or the courtesy medical staff for physicians. And so we created a third category, which is telemedicine providers, where the telemedicine provider is never physically in the building. And we feel like that if you're going to have the privileges that go with active medical staff, you need to physically be in the building and understand all of our organization's processes, not just the narrow scope that goes with your telemedicine exposure. And so for that reason, the new telemedicine rule was constructed that will restrict the opportunity. So a telemedicine provider, because they don't have active privileges, cannot vote and cannot be hold office for the medical staff.
Now, do we credential and make sure they are all credentialed
Yes.
in telemedicine?
Absolutely. Yes.
I want to make sure.
Yes. Good question.
And can you go over also, Dr. Whitcup, the one-to-one process, because that was a little, that it will be a one-to-one delegated responsibility.
Keep going. Keep going. I'll remember what I said.
That if you have, for example, in the pharmacy, you have to, or another provider, Primera would refer someone, and our hospital will be the only person that would have that relationship with them. Is that right?
That patient, is that what you're saying, or that?
One-to-one delegated responsibility.
The delegated credentialing.
Credentialing, yes.
So that's not part of the bylaws changes.
Oh, I thought that was part of it, because I asked that question.
Yes, it's slightly there. It's allowing for it to exist. So delegated credentialing means we'll use Primera since that's what you brought up.
Yeah.
So you can create an organization. So I'm going to use Evergreen for example.
Mm-hmm.
Evergreen has worked with Primera, and Primera says, you know what, we have worked with you for the last couple of years. You have demonstrated to us that you, Evergreen, absolutely understand and you do a great job with credentialing. We have no question about your processes and your standards. Mm-hmm. We will delegate credentialing to you. So if you say that they meet all the standards, we're fine with that. You don't have to process them through us. That's called delegated credentialing.
If they decline, what happens?
If who declines?
Evergreen, let's just say.
So if Evergreen says you do not meet our standards, then that provider would not be privileged to practice at Evergreen underneath with Primera's insurance. Yeah. So
it will not be passed on to the next provider.
Correct. You're correct. That agreement only happens between the hospital that receives the delegation. Okay. That's right. That's right. So you kind of created a good segue into the next three. So changes 3, 4, and 5 very much integrate together. And so that is the ability to do delegated and direct credentialing. So right now, the variety of credentialing that we do, try and ignore what I just told you about insurances, because that's now we're just coming back to medical staff. But the concept will hold true. But so the types of, let's say this again, there's 2 varieties of being able to credential somebody. You can do it directly, which is the way we do it right now. We do all the work ourselves. When a medical staff member comes to seek privileges to work here, we are the ones who go and do all their background checks, do checks, confirm their license, confirm their training, do their criminal background checks, do their drug screens, all of those things, check national data banks, a long list of things that we do that we went over in work study. We do all of those ourselves. Because with telemedicine services, it may be highly likely that we get a large group of providers from a hospital who is highly similar to us, just in the same way, in the conversation that Emma brought up, that in our example, Primera said, Evergreen, you do a great job. You will honor your credentialing. We can do the same thing, and we can say, other hospital, you've done a great job. You adhere to all of our standards. We've done a review of you. We'll just honor your credentialing because we have this relationship under a contractual relationship together.
So that
So
means
the
the other
bylaws
hospital will
allow
do
us.
the tele.
They do all the work.
Okay.
They do all the work of the credentialing. They're the ones who are going to provide telemedicine services to us,
Okay.
and we'll just honor their work. So again, stopping redundancy, stopping doing extra work just for the sake of doing work when you could honor someone else's work because they've demonstrated they do it fine.
It's a whole lot easier for the patient too, isn't it?
Well, the patient is spared all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very much
Win-win.
sausage making. Yeah. 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 So that's what the last three changes reflect, is those different credentialing processes. I'm happy to go into any more detail, and I can't take back if I've done too much. Yes.
I have a question. Chair.
Yes, you're right, Commissioner Pollard.
And that is, a couple places fees are mentioned. Now I know it's tough enough to get through docs, recruit them and get them to come and other medical providers. But do some hospitals, or do we, I don't know, charge fees for credentialing and or recruiting for telemedicine providers? Can we somehow recover some of our costs through fees for credentialing?
We do. So right
Are they
now,
sufficient? Are they substantial enough to be mentioned?
they are set. In fact, it's in a section of the bylaws that is not undergoing amendment process right now, so that's why it's not in front of you. But we have fees right now in place that are for both initial credentialing, and it's a different amount that's for re-credentialing because the workload is different between those two. And the fee is set to recapture, to recoup the amount of expense that we incur because of doing the work. So it's not a revenue generating, but it's a cost recoupment.
Is it comparable to other hospitals?
It is not. It is about 25% of what other hospitals charge.
Over?
Under.
Under. Why don't we just bring it up to what other hospitals charge?
It's really because the way you, because of the very reason that you said it's your introduction, which is sometimes it's very challenging for physicians to pay those fees and recruit them. So that's one way that we can attract them to participate with us.
That, but when they're making $250,000 a year, I don't think they're going to do $25 a day.
Yeah, that's our bylaws would have to be changed for that.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Whitlock or for either of the members of the medical committee? Hearing none, we will move on.
Do we need to, I will make the motion that we accept these amendments to the bylaws.
A second. Is there any further discussion?
Did I hear at the beginning that the board does not have to approve the bylaws of the medical committee? I thought actually in the
No.
state law we did.
Well, that's what I said.
But I thought I heard someone say that we're not required to. Is that not true?
You are.
We are
They have been.
required.
All right,
They
then
have
I second the motion.
I seconded.
You second, I third.
Is there any further discussion on the medical committee bylaws? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Medical staff We had a long discussion about this too, re-credentialing. I guess I can read all the names. Initial privileging to provisional status. There were 3 teleradiation positions. There's 1, 2 to transitioning from provisional to courtesy. Renewal to active staff. Thank goodness. Dr. David Kim, because he's going to be the president of the group next year. Renewal to courtesy staff, Madison McCullough. Anyway, 4 more teleradiation people, radiology people, total of 10. I move that we accept the re-credentialing of all these folks.
I second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we go to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it's passed. Okay. Yes, facilities committee, I mentioned over to Commissioner Collins.
Will you finish?
Yeah.
We're done.
Okay, facilities committee. Commissioner Heron and I are on this committee, and other members are the CEO, Steve Daniel, Kim Woodcock, and Scott Mulhava, who does all the work along with this staff. And this time we did have a community member in attendance. That's William Johnson, who has been very active in the newspapers in support of annexation of the city of Snoqualmie, and he's the former city planning director of city planning division. And it's nice to have him in attendance. What I'm going to do is to just read over the various items, and if there are any questions, please ask. But with our new streamlined approach, there's no point in going over a 4-page report word by word. I want to say that the most important thing at the meeting was that we recognize the staff of the Environmental Services Department for their outstanding performance in maintaining the cleanliness of the hospital and positive impact on patient care, as well as working together as a unified team. The members of the department include, and they are listed alphabetically in the minutes, and they were listed in the agenda at the meeting, and we recognize each one of them individually. And they're super. I think if we were to have an inspection, or if we were to be a competition or inspection of the hospitals in the area, we'd find that our hospital is the cleanest. It's just super what they do. At any rate, we recognize them individually. Now, under new business, we have a report on the gift shop. Tom, I'll give you the option to say something about that if you wish.
Thank you. I do, because it shows that there's a loss on the operation of the gift shop. But take into account the fact that this year the expenses include the inventory, the initial inventory costs. So the expenses are not what you typically see in an ongoing a report where you'd see cost of goods sold compared against your revenue. The costs here include cost of goods sold plus the establishment of inventory, which is the vast majority of the expenses here of that 11,899.
Yeah, and I'd just like to comment that when the idea of a gift shop came up, I was vehemently opposed to it for 2 reasons. One is I didn't know they had enough business. That's the legitimate reason. But also the way it was going to be staffed was by volunteers from the foundation, and I didn't feel that was reliable. The way things have turned out, I'm sort of half wrong, and I want to admit it. I think when you're wrong, you should be able to admit it. So I'm at least half wrong, because the gift shop itself is a real asset to the hospital. And now when I look at where the gift shop is located, I think, what would this dead space be without the gift shop? It livens up the whole cafeteria and lobby and everything. And then the person we have staffing that is not a volunteer. She's an employee.
She's pretty sweet. She smiles at everybody. She's a good salesperson.
Her name is, well, I call her Moonbeam. But I think her Asian name is
Moonjong.
Moonjong. I like Moonbeam. But anyway, she's terrific. She was, and it still is, our concierge, which meant that she would greet people at the front door and really make them feel wonderful person. Anyhow, and also a pretty doggone good person. That's great. So she's super. Now, I didn't intend to get that name. I'll tell you that gift shop operation has turned out much better than I ever imagined, and certainly much better than I feared. So it's at least 50% wrong on that. Okay, next item is the Echo Lakes State's lawsuit update. If you're, it's not really very sexy. Old business, patient and visitor transportation. We're working basically on transportation, get more people to the hospital, get on a metro line, or anything we can do to improve access to hospital. I'm just going to read these things. Tom, interrupt me at any point if you want to speak on one of the items, okay? 8 signs on Parkway and local signage. Traffic safety. Snow retention system. Okay? Water on East Campus. Making the hospital a community gathering place. In-county search and rescue, and other. And then there was public comment, and Dwayne Johnson did comment. As a matter of fact, we were probably 10 minutes late getting out of there because we got into a discussion. And that's not noted here, but at any rate, Dwayne Johnson did comment as a member of the public. I think that unless there are questions, we'll move right along. Tom, would you like to add anything?
Yep.
Commissioner Herron is also a member of the committee. Would you like to add something?
Very minor comment from me, and that is that list of organizations using the hospital shrinks during the summer. So, lest you think there was an exodus, we actually are now dealing with a lot of inquiry as the school year kicks off again, and we've had a lot of people asking for space, and so now we're back to juggling the calendar, making sure we have access for those who qualify and want to meet here. And it's wonderful to have the community coming in through our front door and using our rooms.
Yes, and that idea originally came from the Department of Health in the state of Washington, who said at our conference, you need to make your hospital community together. That's we were trying for 2 years to move in that direction. And I'd like to talk about some ideas I have and so forth, but that's running a committee. But I want to invite members of the board, if you have any ideas about events, activities, people that might meet here, things like that, please let the facilities committee know. So I appreciate that very much.
I just want to make a comment that one of the things that we as facilities, group of committee members, is that it's always the added feature in our meetings is recognizing the staff that makes things happen, the people that. So we've done this a couple times, and it's nice to put the name and the face, because some of the staff members I'm not even familiar who they are. I hear their names, but I don't. So it's always nice to recognize and know who they are. The frontline workers that makes our hospital, gathering community, one of the best hospital. I would like to say that, and it's beautiful. I'm proud of it. Thank you.
And are there any questions for Facilities Committee?
Yeah, so we are legally joined in a lawsuit now?
We've been legally joined for years. Tom can probably address that.
Bob Sturbank with the city is leading this and asked if we would be a participant in it, and that goes back years that we became
Are we on pleading paper in a lawsuit?
I'm sorry, I'm not that.
Are we actually one of the parties to this lawsuit?
We are.
And are we incurring an expense?
No, we just agreed that we have similar interests with the city.
Commissioner Spikers, currently, during the
Well, I don't have any problem, I just didn't know what's going on.
I don't know if there's a
Lawsuit or?
I'd be happy to put some of that information.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it, but I just was kind of curious. Are we?
Walk the ride.
Alrighty, physician credentialing, we already did that, I'm just checking things off here, folks. And approval of medical, any other questions from facilities? Okay, we're moving on into old business. Affiliation proposal evaluation and final selection recommendation.
Madam President, I have a
Yes.
motion.
Oh, do you have a motion? Okay. Mr. Pollard.
It's a two-part motion. I move that we table item 1 under old business and item 1 under new business action until further notice. And 2, that consultants Sarah Cave and Steve Hubner suspend any and all billable activity relating to merger and acquisition until further notice, effective at midnight this date, September 14th, 2017.
Is there a second for that motion?
Is it, okay, a question,
Yes.
Madam President. Is your motion applies to old business number 1 and new business number 1? I thought I heard you
New business number 1 is surplus equipment.
Old business
to
number
table
1 and item 1 under new business action until further notice.
Oh.
Now, probably we should first get a second if we're going to discuss it.
I see what you're doing. Okay. I will second it. Is there any questions or discussion?
Why?
What? For me, I have looked at, we only have one proposal. We don't have more than one, so we don't have anything to compare it to. That's one issue I have. I have issues with the financials that I've looked at. I have some issues with the information that I have gotten about regional health. In fact, regional health just developed and got their license in December of 2016. And we're accepting financials that have 2015, which means they're from Taft Hospital. They're not, or Sunnyside, they're not from the regional, they're from somebody else. So I don't feel comfortable moving forward, and the fact that we only have one proposal, we don't have anything to compare it to. So for me, I don't want to just take something, because that's what we've got, and that's all we've got. And I'm willing to listen to other commissioners' thoughts on it, but I don't see spending the money and the time when we don't have any comparison, and it just doesn't go right to me. It doesn't feel right. Mr. Paul.
I just want to say, when you say money and time, we've now spent about $40,000 through this month on consultants. We have one bid. This is called a single bid. And so today I called up the immediate past president of the Washington affiliate of the National Association of Government Procurement Officers to discuss this with this single bid business. And she said, well, of course, you due diligence will want to research why the others didn't bid. But she said, it's not unusual, and you can just study. This is going to this bidding process being canceled due to lack of competition. We only got one bid, and we are therefore canceling this process.
I also know that you can also redo it at a later date. You don't have to sit, if you don't get qualified people the first time, or if you don't like what you see the first time around when you put out an RFP, then you can redo an RFP at a later time, or even just say, okay, these candidates didn't meet what we want. We're going to redo it in a month or two. Or if you have multiple candidates and you pick somebody and they don't meet the criteria, then you can go ahead and say they didn't meet our criteria, and when we get to the end, then you can go ahead and re-advertise.
And there's another alternative that I was given by and that is that this might be a good place to stop. We spent $40,000, we got one bid, and then begin negotiating personally with individual providers and hospitals and systems. Not involved consultants anymore at this time, and not go through, not accept any further bidding process at this time, but individually go out and contact people that we'd like to have become our partner.
I would like to hear from the other board members. I think we all need to be able to have some
What
input into
have we considered what the outcome would be and the cost if we continue to prolong and delay the process, considering that we are, at a very critical point in the future of Snoqualmie Hospital in terms of our long-term debt. So this is where I needed to get more clarification. I thought that we are on the due diligence level process. Could we not follow that process without having to go through this approving the resolution?
Well, I suppose we could, but then the due diligence is really saying we're gonna accept you as far as I know. And maybe I don't have the process down right. But I thought the next thing was doing due diligence as far as, and that'll cost money to say, yeah, we're looking at you and we're gonna hire you. I mean, who else are we gonna go after? We're not doing a due diligence between two or three. We just got one. We only had one entity send us an RFP. So. And I want to quit talking, and I'd like to hear from Commissioner Cyphers and Commissioner Gibbons. I want to make sure.
Well, I have a lot to say.
I'm sure you do.
I'm disappointed in the narrow thinking that I've just heard. But nevertheless, I understand how people can say that this particular entity doesn't have the experience. You can say anyway, I'm just saying.
That's
okay?
how he feels. Well,
Okay?
Yeah.
How I feel.
I see your pain.
There's other ways to get around this with very quick expense, or very little expense. And what I would pose, this is what I would have done if we were to agree to go forward with the process, not do anything more than ask one concession up front or two maybe. One, on paper, will you put $10 million in an escrow account and leave it there until you've completed construction of the facility surgical? If you can't do that, then they don't have the money. They won't do it. Now, if they don't do it, we could take their $10 million and we'll be $10 million richer without doing anything. So I don't see how narrow-minded the folks are here. There are plenty of ways to skin
A cat.
I don't want to say a cat because there's some cat people. Skin a mouse or something. Anyway, there's plenty of other ways, and I can tell you, I just worked this out on paper just now. I just jotted down and I said, well, if our reimbursement on Medicare, which is 50% in our inpatient care, is $200 less per person, and that would equate to about 11 patients a day that are affected. $200 times 11 patients times 365 is roughly $750,000 per year. So you better come up with a plan by next year that says we're going to make up $750,000, and I mean it, because we will not be past that. We will inevitably, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, our reimbursement rate is going down, right? Will continue to go down. Yeah, it will continue to go down. And we'll probably, so I'm just saying that $200 less per patient day, that's $750,000 per year we have to make up.
That's $803,000.
There you go, 803,000.
Now, my question is, are you sure that this entity, who hasn't even, the financials that they show us, 2015 aren't even there?
Wait a minute.
But he said.
I'm just saying, put $10 million where your mouth is, put it in an escrow, and if you don't come forward with the surgical, we get the money.
But he's suggesting
President, can I,
What's so bad about that? I
Well,
mean,
what's
no,
so-
no, no.
that's what an escrow is.
Order, we need more.
So I think there's some problems on the narrow thinking here. There are more ways to look at this that we can win-win. And the way I look at it is, I don't care what their financials are. They just did a deal. They just closed it. They've got several properties now that are,
Is he
you
just
mind
going
if
to be allowed
I,
to go on and
Yeah,
on
he
and
is for
on?
a minute, he is.
this is important.
Yes.
They've got several properties. They have tons of equity in. They bought everything on 15 cents on a dollar.
Mhm.
So they got a ton of capital available to get loans and not a problem. And if they can't make it, we get our 10 million. Why can't we propose that? One question, will you put $10 million, sign on the line in an escrow, and if you don't get this done in 2 years, the surgical facility, then we get it.
David,
Or if you renege anytime during the first period of time, we get it.
Those are your exit provisions.
So there you go. We've got an insurance policy.
yeah, Commissioner Spikers, we're not narrow-minded. We're just bringing out different opinions here. And I tend to agree to what you said about what your suggestion, because in doing so, regional health will demonstrate their capability, their ability to meet our finances. So if that's the case, I think, that is a scenario that we can look into.
Well, as I look at it, the debt ratio is pretty high. They're 240 to 1 asset. That's it. They've got, the debt ratio is not good.
That's because the tricky thing about accounting is when you buy something for 10 cents or 15 cents on the dollar, that's what you put down on the paper, you see. So your value of your properties, they bought it for 10 cents on the dollar. So it's 10 times. Their assets are maybe 8, 9 times what you see on paper. And because they took out, they did deals with all of these entities, like 3 of them over there. They got them all for 10 or 15 cents on the dollar. They had to put down what they paid for them, not what the real value is.
Madam
So-
President,
Before you make any decisions, you better have at least a CPA examine some of these documents and pose one question to them. It'll only take 10 minutes. Will you put $10 million on the line on escrow? Yes or no? That's the first condition. If they say yes, will you guarantee our debt, $53 million? Yes. Then we go from there.
It's Commissioner Young's opportunity to say something because she hasn't said anything if she chooses. Do you want to say anything?
I don't know if I want to say anything or not. I wouldn't vote to get rid of the consultants, etc. I would like to see more information before we jump in the boat.
Okay. Okay. I think that's a legitimate thing.
Madam President, may I make a comment as well at some point?
Of course you
Thank you. Just drawing us back to the agenda tonight, and I don't want to steal Sarah's thunder here, but what she had planned for was an overview of where we've been in our process, what our next steps are, and she has a proposed motion for the board tonight. And again, I'm going to steal a little bit of thunder just so you know what was coming to you this evening, and that was a motion to invite Regional to come and present their proposal in person, which is consistent with the process that we reviewed and approved. When it was contemplated what the process was going to be and what we approved was that we would select finalists out of those that proposed. And we're staying true to that process, even with the fact that we have a single proposer. And the next step along that timeline was to invite the proposer or proposers to present their proposal in person. And we actually spoke with them yesterday to see if there would be a time that would work for them. And the time that works coincides with our work study session in October. And so that was what was going to come before the group. My other comment is that what is being asked of the board at this point in our process is not an evaluation of regional, whether we have positive feelings about them or negative feelings. By the way, parenthetically, I will make the comment that the board's evaluation of the proposal actually was more positive than staff's. So staff has some things that we're looking very closely at as well. There are things that we want answers to, just like the board does. I think we're all together on that. That said, it's at this point in the process, we're asking ourselves the question, did the proposal speak to the criteria and the goals as expressed in the RFP? Now the question in front of us is not, do we think that regional can perform? That's what comes next. But that due diligence in the process comes after the very next step, which is, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Let's have them come in. Let's see these people. Let's talk to these people and hear them propose. And that was what we wanted to do as part of this process. And that's what we were going to present as a suggested motion for tonight. Thank you.
Well, I just want to speak in favor of the motion because I've done quite a bit of research on this.
Pardon?
I say I have done quite a bit of research on this.
Yes, sir.
Community groups in the economic are very concerned about the financial viability of the region. And I think that we could have a better chance. So, for example, when we came into this thing, we said we need two things. We need financial help, and we need branding. The brand of Regional Health Yakima is a negative factor for us. The branding of, say, let's say, Overlake Hospital, it's worth $1 million. Swedish, worth $1 million. The branding of Regional of Yakima, which, by the way, they're in an identity crisis now. They spent 2 paragraphs here talking about the biography of the person they were engaging to do a branding study, and 2 lines about how they were going to ensure that the current staff stays on board. We got this a very uneven report, very poorly written. But at any rate, the point is, we expected to see money. They're not going to give us any money. They're going to accept some of our risk of our revenue bonds, but they're not going to take the LPGO bonds at all. And then this business that Mr. Spike has just had an idea of adding on a building or putting in a building for a surgical center. That's a screwball idea when you're 10 miles from Swedish Issaquah, a full-service hospital with all those facilities. You can be there in 10 minutes. And that's what our population is doing. So I just feel that the experts that I have spoken with, I can document them, and their studies that went on, the certificate of need process, Mr. Spackage doesn't seem to know the hospital is involved, but at any rate, they required public comment. And the public comment was saying, this is a shaky organization. It was only formed in 2016. They're in worse financial shape than we are. They have a 240% debt to asset ratio. We've probably got a 200, so we're not in great shape, but we're better off than they are. Okay. They're in bad shape. So, at any rate, if we were to end up affiliating with Regional, it would be the worst mistake. And we've made some big ones. Mr. Spackage knows about a $10, $14 million mistake that he was involved in.
Okay, I'd like to move on.
It would maybe be the end of the hospital district if we were to end up associated
Thank
with
you.
this organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to hear from other commissioners, let them have an opportunity, and then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion.
I believe what Commissioner Sparkers was suggesting was just an alternative. We need to look at every way that we can to see which one would be the better choice. So that's why we're discussing this, to bring in some new ideas of how we can survive this process.
Commissioner Spikers, do you want to add anything?
You know, without responding to some of the personal attacks. Commissioner.
Point of order, there was no personal attack.
That's sometimes a matter of opinion, but it's
So,
recognized.
without that, I do think that you should all consider a quick question to them, but I don't even care if I meet them or not. Will they put $10 million in escrow? Period. If they don't want to do that, then I don't want to go further.
Okay.
You know, but at least give them if they can't come up with that kind of money, they're not going to be able to do anything. So, if they want to take that chance, put 10 million in escrow, put their money where their mouth is, and if they don't come through, we get the money.
Commissioner
So that's how I feel.
Young, do you have anything to offer?
Well, I don't want us to, as my mother said, cut off your nose to spite your face. So I think that we need to extend the invitation, talk to them. I need more information.
Okay, I think I need more information too. And that's part of the issue. I don't like the information I'm seeing. And if they can counter that information with something that's better, then I will be more open. Like right now, the information I have, I am not open. So I think is there a call for a vote?
Could you clarify what you mean by I'm not open?
Right now, if we were to do it right now with the information I have, I would not vote to do anything with them based on what I know and what I have found. Now, I may not have all the information. I'm sure there's more information out there. And in some ways, and this is my fault, with the situation in our family and losing our son, I have been off the radar for 2 months. So now I'm on it, but that means that I'm Johnny come lately, catching up on information. And information I should have known earlier, I did not know.
I don't think you need to apologize.
Well, it's the truth. So,
Frankly, I was surprised that Steve Goodyear, who's a good healthcare financing expert, and Sarah Gage, but especially Steve, because of his deep background in that area, would even present us with this effective bid. And then only one and pretend like we should go for it.
I think they're
find
required
that
by law,
boggles the
Commissioner
mind.
Pollard. I think once you put out an RFP and you get results, you have to go forward with the process.
That's not true.
Well, you do at to a certain level.
Our agreement with the consultants is we can stop at any time.
Okay.
That's what this motion to table is. And I think Mr. Spikers might have a pretty good idea. Why don't we table it until we can get the $10 million earnest money? If we don't get that, then that's it.
What sounds to me, and I'm going to put this up to vote soon, is that if we go the next step, we will have that opportunity. I think if we go the next step, we'll get closer to being able, if I understand correctly, we will be able to ask those questions and find out. Does that sound about right? Sarah, I'm going to ask you. Okay. So
Are we going?
we have a resolution on the table. We've had discussion. Now we need to vote.
A motion is not a resolution, it's a motion.
Motion. I'm sorry.
I
Thank you.
hear that
The motion, would you read the motion?
You'd like to give me a moment to find it.
Sure.
Maybe the clerk, does the clerk have the motion? No.
Madam Chair, I think I can call it fairly accurately. The motion.
Yeah, I've got it.
Mr. Pollard's got it.
I move that we table item 1 under old business and item 1 under new business action until further notice, and the consultants Sarah Cave and Steve Goodyear suspend any and all billable activity relating to merger and acquisition until further notice, effective at midnight this date, September 14, 2017, because I want to be paid for coming out. Of course. But that's the motion. I'm moving to, that we table this. Now, we can call it up at any time, but in the meantime, cease and desist all further activities with regional health of Yakima. This is Snoqualmie Valley, not Yakima Valley.
We've had discussion. I second the motion. All the things we made the motion, I second it. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Did you say aye?
Nay.
I have to abstain. I'm torn between
I'm
the,
gonna have to abstain too.
the discussion where I really don't feel comfortable either way, because due to the fact that, you know, the longer the delay and all this stuff without doing our due diligence is getting in the way.
Okay, so we have,
Madam Chairman.
yes, Commissioner, yes.
I may correct you here. To abstain on a vote, you must have a conflict of interest. I have not heard any expression of a conflict of interest that either of you have. You're choosing not to vote, therefore, without expressing why you would need to abstain due to a conflict of interest, then you would have a valid reason to abstain. Otherwise, you can't use an abstainment in a process to avoid voting.
It doesn't constitute a no vote.
Silence means no?
You can abstain, but it then becomes a no vote.
You cannot abstain unless you have a conflict of interest to express why you should have required to abstain from a vote.
Okay.
I've heard from neither of the commissioners why they need to abstain other than they don't want to vote. That's not a proper
Would,
reason
would,
under Robert Rules of Order.
would silence indicate no?
No, I guess you could refuse to vote. You would be sanctioned by the board then for not participating as required under the duties as an elected official.
Went to my-
Okay, we have to restart this vote. We better do it right.
I like the recorded vote on that.
All those in,
I'll call, in other words, we call the vote.
Hold vote.
Again, the motion is to table this resolution or the affiliation, old business 1 and new business action 1, correct?
Yes.
Just for my
That
clarification.
was part of
Is
it.
to table it and we
Part of
call
the
it
motion.
next.
The motion also included the ending of services by Cave and Hebner.
No, it suspends.
I'm sorry, thank you, suspends.
Suspends, we can take this back off the table and go back to what
That
we were
was-
doing,
that-
but we
that was
need
the
more
sec-
information.
that
Maybe
was
we
the
can
second
use
part of
Mr.
it.
Spiker's ploy there for earnest money.
But-
Various things can be done.
But there is no date when to recall. I'd like to see the date where we can, right now, we're gonna be suspending the services. How long is that gonna be? A year, 2 years from now? We need to take some action on that particular.
Well, I think it can be tabled to a date certain, but also can be tabled indefinitely, which means it can be brought up tomorrow.
well, we have a motion as read right now. So I think that's, unless we can, change, amend the motion. And I don't, can we
Why
do
don't
that?
we amend the motion to continue the motion until after we hear what they have to say, and then we can table it at that point. We don't like what they have to say.
They, regional.
Regional, and
The motion's on the table.
Yeah.
I call
Okay.
for the motion.
I'm calling for amendment to the motion.
Call for the question. Call for
There
the
is a
question is a request to close the debate. You can vote on that. That's non-debatable further as to whether you're going to close the debate. Once you close the debate, then you will take the vote.
Who made a motion to close the debate? Nobody.
We should call
Have you-
call the
You
question.
call-
I
call
call
for
the
the question.
question. which is
Calling
the
for the
same
question
as-
is the same as a request to close the debate.
Okay.
You must,
Well,
that is not.
I didn't hear
debatable. It must be heard.
Now, to be fair to my colleague, would I hear an amendment which would take precedent, would it not, or would my call for close take precedent?
You call for the question. I don't know the order. All I know is you call for the question. So I'm advising the board, I'm advising the president, close debate.
And take a vote.
The vote is first to close the debate.
Okay. All right, do we want to vote to close the debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And you debate will continue as to the motion.
So do we want to amend the motion at all?
I would like to amend it. I don't mind what Gene Pollard, he's got a lot of good things. I don't want to waste money either. And I don't trust anybody out there that has been in business since not even a year.
2016?
I understand that. I totally understand that.
December?
I just want to do a little more due diligence, listen to what they have to say, and if they don't want to come up with 10 million escrow, then we can table it indefinitely. But I really think we've done a lot of work here. I mean, Commissioner Pollard's done a lot of work. He's done a lot of research. You've done a lot of research on them. Commissioner Young. Emma's done a lot of work. I mean, we've all done a lot of work here, and just to not hear what they have to say, it's just kind of not really. So I'd ask at least hear what they have to say, and then we can have an executive session with some suggestions as to what we should demand. After.
Is there any other discussion?
Pardon.
Again, I'm sorry, clarification, if we do vote for this particular affiliation proposal, would this mean that we are agreeing to go ahead with regional?
I don't
No,
think
no,
so.
no.
Okay,
No,
just
we're
want to make
just
sure.
going to, no, the next step is to listen to them.
Okay, good.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah,
I
mine too.
understand that.
Okay, so is that an amendment? Did we get an amendment? Yes, no?
That's my amendment to at least listen to them as soon as possible, not later. And then we can go into an executive session and decide, or not decide, but talk and discuss what are our options at that point. And then in open hearing, we can go ahead and.
Well, you have to have a specific exemption for an executive session. Probably not be available to decide whether or not you want to do this. You would be able to discuss
Discuss the dollar amount.
At least of the property.
But that's all you can discuss.
That's right. There would be a potential opportunity for any executive session.
Do I hear a second on the amendment? I second. Okay, so now we have a motion from Commissioner Pollard, and we're going to amend it to just say that we're going to go to this next level, and after that we will reevaluate whether we're going to go
Well, you have to
further.
take a vote
On the amendment.
You have to have discussion on the amendment. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. The amendment is now before the body. We can discuss it.
Is there a second? Do we need a second for the
It has
amendment?
been seconded.
I second. Okay, so is there any
Moved and seconded.
other discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Pollard?
Well, we've received their proposal. We compared it to our RFP. Their proposal includes a lot of information about themselves. It's really quite interesting how patronizing they are to our staff. The board's never mentioned, our board's never mentioned. It's not that I'm jealous, but I mean, when I read their proposal, I felt like I was on the lot of a used car salesman. All of the bragging that they do about themselves. And also, I will say that in my opinion, in my research, the RFP process itself was not a level playing field, which may help explain why we got only one bid. We sent out a dozen bids to qualified people like Overlake and like Evergreen, like the University of Washington. We got one bid from an organization that doesn't know us. Those people know us. They didn't bid. One organization that doesn't know us, that's 2 hours drive away, 160 miles, they're the only bid we got. And they don't know us. And if you look at their plans for $120,000 million new hospital over there and all of the other projects, come on. These people are in worse shape than we are. Okay. But at any rate, the point is we've got enough material now, and therefore, I think before we invite Mr. Gallagher to come here, that we have a work study session and go over their proposal, because the only thing we've done right now is we've met individually with Sarah Cave. Steve Hubner was not there, but he participated by telephone as best he could from the airport, which was rather awkward. But the point being that we were divided and conquered. I don't know what Emma, Commissioner Herron said in that in the process, or Mr. Spikers, or Joan, or yourself. I don't know what was said, but you see, the point is, when you're in a group, you stimulate each other's ideas about the discussion. When you're separated, I think that's a legitimate part of it, is having individual conferences with the consultant. But then you need a work session to go over it together, where the group is more than the sum of its parts. And we didn't do that. And I think, now at this point, after consulting with Sarah Cade and Steve Hubner, they got our input and they came up with further materials. We need now to have a work study session before we invite Mr. Gallagher from Regional Health Yakima to come over and talk to us.
Commissioner Pollard, I think, oh, sorry. Yeah, the work study session. The work study session we did on, we took into the process, all of us.
That was a slideshow.
That
was a slideshow. We have not taken this
Excuse
proposal.
me, Commissioner Pollard, Commissioner Herron has the floor right now.
Excuse me.
We understand the dilemma we're facing with the affiliation. However, part of Commissioner Spiker's recommendation or suggestion was not included in the discussion. So I think that it would be, responsible for us to at least look at that alternative, that option. We are not, that's the reason I asked whether we are voting to just look into regional health. We're voting to move on to see whether they will have the ability, the financial capability to meet, what was recommended by Commissioner Spikers. So we're not voting. We can stop right after we've heard from the from regional health. Once it was determined that they're not able to meet those requirements. So I think we're not really voting for just the regional health. We can move on at a later time when we as a board decide that they're not the perfect fit for our hospital.
I think on my behalf, after listening to Commissioner Spiker's amendment, I like the amendment. It gives us more time, and I think it's a good idea to at least hear what they have to say. And I'm willing to have my mind changed, but I'm not feeling like that's going to happen. But I think if we can go that step and then go this step further, I appreciate the amendment, and I think that validates what we are saying and still takes us to another meeting. So for me, I'm in favor of the amendment, and we haven't voted on the amendment yet, have we?
We have not, you must first vote on the amendment.
Yeah. So are we?
So I made the motion for amendment.
Okay, I've been listening to everybody, and an affiliation is not just about money. It's about how the organization works and how we would congeal. So, money's important, but if you can't work together, you might as well not do it.
Are we ready
We
for a
don't know
vote?
anything.
With respect to that, this is today that Mr. Young worked with Mr. Mason for about 50 years.
No.
How long? 30 years, whatever. She's been in the nursing business for 50 years, but at any rate, she had a long career with Virginia Mason, which unfortunately did not submit. However, I have received some information that we have the ability to do it, that they would be one of the people that we should now go into individual negotiations with And there might be a chance of affiliation with an organization like that, not an organization that doesn't know us, 2 hours away, and the whole bit. But at any rate, go ahead and have your, what happens in city government, and I think what's happening here, is everybody gets all the way to the end with pre-arrangements, so that all you have to do is have a rubber stamp board sign it.
But
And
we
that's
didn't.
how we get into difficulty.
But we didn't do that, and we've had a good discussion. So are we ready to vote on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? We started with a
amendment now.
We have the amendment.
amendment right now.
And we have the amendment, it's just, I and others spoken so much, and then roughly, we have a rereading of the amendment.
Yes.
I would only make, I would say that the motions are not in conflict. I'd say we can table it, and then we can take it off the table to hear Mr. Gallagher when he comes. So they're not in conflict.
Okay, so I have a call for the question. It's time to vote. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Pollard has identified the call for the question is actually called closed debate, so we do have to close the debate.
That's what, okay, and did you call the question? Yes. So we had a call for the question, so now we're voting on the amendment.
Now voting for closed debate.
Oh, we're voting to close debate. All those in favor of the closing the debate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
That motion carries.
That
We now
motion
have
carries.
closed debate on the amendment. The amendment is before the body.
Now we're voting on the amendment to see if we want that amendment in the original amendment that,
Original motion.
a motion that
Amend the
Commissioner
original
Pollard had.
motion, yeah.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Now, with the amendment on the motion, are we ready to vote on the motion with the amendment?
The motion is now amended.
It
For
is
the body,
amended,
the motion is now amended.
So are
It
we,
has been amended.
do we have to now redo it, or do we just vote on it?
Vote on it.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion with the amendment, say aye.
Could we have a rereading of the motion with the amendments? Is that legitimate to ask?
Sure. If you need that inquiry, you would read your motion again as now amended.
Because Valerie, are you prepared to read the motion exactly, and I'll have to find it.
Item number 1 on the old business and item number 1 on the new business action. And the consultants, Sarah McCabe and Steve Hebner, to suspend any and all billing activity as of midnight as on this date.
And I think my amendment was to continue that until at least we get to listen to it.
Several of the votes.
That's correct. That would be the amended motion. Motion as amended, continue the underlying motion, principal motion, until after the meeting. That's the basis.
So if after that meeting, and let's make this clear to everybody, we're gonna go ahead, have the meeting, and then after that meeting, then we will suspend anything until we
Could
decide.
we do this? I'm sorry, I just found this because rereading the motion was not clear. I can reread it.
Sure.
I can give it to you, Valerie. I move that we table item 1 under old business and item 1 under new business action.
Actually, item number 2.
Until further notice, and 2, this is the second part of the motion, that consultants Sarah Cave and Steve Kugner suspend any and all billable activity relating to merger and acquisition until further notice effective at the United States September 15, 2017. And then if Mr. Spackers could read his motion for the amendment.
To continue that motion at least until after we hear from No, I'm asking to continue that motion at least until after we hear.
So your motion would become active after we have the next
Oh,
meeting.
so what we're suggesting is you're asking me, and I guess I'm looking at this, but to table until date certain.
No, he's amended your motion so that your motion would not be heard until after these individuals get presented.
So
And after they present, you would then bring it to the next available meeting, all special meeting, somehow get it before the body so that that motion would be heard.
But
It's an amendment.
in the meantime, it's tabled.
If you want to view it as being tabled, that would be probably a vote.
Yeah, may I ask, this motion, the original motion, did it fail because there was no
No,
vote?
it didn't fail, it was amended.
It was amended.
Yeah, because it hasn't failed yet, because it's not before the body to get vote on it. You're gonna vote on it now. As amended. So as you're amending your motion,
Yes,
The motion is still there.
the motion is still there, but it's amended, so
Right.
you would not hear it and vote on it until after you have a meeting with the one proposed responder to your RFP.
I understand that,
So does
but
this mean
why
that
are we going back? I
If
mean,
you
we,
got motion alive, I would need to vote for the amendment.
That is correct.
What's the problem, Emma?
we discussed this ad nauseam, and I understand why we continue to go back and forth. Let's just, go with what we have already have, that's existing, the vote.
Okay. So we have it amended, and now we're gonna vote on the motion that Commissioner Pollard had as amended, which means that that will be held until after we've heard Sarah bring the presentation to us today with then, the hospital, with regional next time. And after we hear from regional, then we will then we'll go the next step.
I want to speak in support of the
Do you want to?
amended motion.
So are we ready to vote? Yeah. All right, all those in favor of the resolution that Commissioner
The
Pollard,
motion as amended.
the motion as amended, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I believe it was unanimous.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
we have a 15-minute recess, please.
How about 10?
How about 15? Because we've been at this now for a couple of hours.
With,
I'm not going to quibble. 10 is better than nothing, but I think we need a recess.
okay, I agree, but with that, we have our schedule until 9:05, and it is now 8:47. Could we extend?
Those schedules don't mean anything.
I didn't adjourn us, Commissioner Pollard.
I know, I'm standing up
Wait,
just because of
Okay, okay.
Should we extend the
issues.
We still need to hear from Sarah.
Oh, yeah,
Commissioner Mayor,
that's what I'm-
you do not need to extend these times. These times are nothing more.
They're
than
just a
advisory.
guideline.
Okay,
They carry no weight, no parliamentary weight, and no weight as to your board rules.
all right.
They're-
So we
you
can
don't
go
have to have
forever.
them. And you can ignore those times.
So we can go forever if you wish.
Yes, you can.
All right, we have a 10-minute. I'm gonna give us a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. Do I need that first? Our 10 minutes are up, and we are back in session at 8:58. Let's see where we are on our agenda.
Excuse me.
Where are we, Val? Where are we on this agenda? Resolution, approval of surplus equipment, I think. New business, old business, affiliation, old business. Old business is first. Thank you. Yep.
I'm okay.
How's that one?
Oh, I'm good.
Sarah, hold on.
Everything from you.
All right, we have started.
It's fine. Okay. Well, good evening. I will do my best to just speed through a little bit of recap here. And mostly what I'd like to do tonight is just clarify a few things about where we are in this process, and also come back to sort of the next steps. So to begin with, what I wanted to do is start by just revisiting the goals of affiliation. And the reason that Steve and I worked through the process of developing and defining these goals with you all is because in any sort of a business negotiation process where you're contemplating a fairly significant transaction, being really clear and having your goals to return to as the guideposts for a process like this is very important. And I'm not going to read through the goals. I will just comment briefly on a couple of things. Clearly, this is the prioritized version of the goals that are up on the slide here. You've seen this before. None of these slides that I'm showing you tonight, by the way, are new content. This is all repeat content. So your first and foremost top two votes really went to affiliating from a position of strength and debt reduction. Followed a little ways back behind that is branding. And then the next two are around viability and growth in scope of services to really deliver what this community, this growing community needs and deserves. And then after that, of course, you all have articulated some goals around community health education and some other things that you would really like to see come out of this process. So I think it's important to redirect you to the goals. Now, that doesn't mean that at some point in time you may wish to revisit these goals. It's just to say that the process thus far has been pretty much designed around achieving the goals. So the second piece that I wanted to the next place that I wanted to go to, I'm not going to recap these slides because they're from our very last work session just a couple of weeks ago. But this is just to remind you all of the process. So we did put out an RFP. We did, in fact, have several parties who intended to respond, and we did have one that followed through with a full proposal. And we went through the evaluation process with you all last session at the work study session. This again is not new content. This is from the slide deck that we used last time. Quick synopsis of Regional's proposal. I'm not going to go through the fine details here, but I think in terms of the content of the proposal aligning to and answering the questions that were articulated in the RFP, that the result of the evaluation of that proposal was that at face value, the elements of the proposal did in fact address what it was you were asking parties to respond to. And I know that Tom has the detailed scoring and spreadsheets and things like that. So at some point, if you all are interested in seeing that detail, you can. It will, I think, show you that while the staff and the consultants did, of course, participate in the process, the commissioners actually evaluated and scored this particular proposal by and large overall more favorably than even the staff and consultants did. So,
what does 3 of 5 commissioners mean?
Excuse me, that we should have fixed that. That was a fix that I noted last time. It was 4 of 5. You were the only commissioner that decided not to participate in the scoring process. So pardon me, that's an error. That should be 4. So the only thing I'll point to here is that, the average scores here are all above a 3.0, and the 3.0, it was a 1 to 5 scale, and the 3 was meets the criteria. And then when we went ahead and did the scores times the weighting, we came up with the numbers that we would, would see if at a minimum it was going to get that level 3. And this is what actually came to pass when we did that math. So these numbers are higher than what's in this column here. So this is, again, just to say, and this is where Tom started, I think, in the discussion, at the point in time where we were at the last work study session, all we had to go on was the proposal. Now, in a process like this, I'm not going to review all of your feedback, but this was the consolidated feedback from the individual sessions, which we reviewed with you last time. In a process like this, there are really kind of, you can think of them, I think we used the terminology with you last time, as phase gates. So the first step is you put the RFP out, you see what you get back. The next step is you evaluate what you get back based on the content that you have, what they have actually stated in their proposal and how well does it address what you've asked them to state. The next step is kind of an informal due diligence. Now I'm being a little careful with semantics here because the technical term due diligence is a very, very deep, exhaustive process that typically does not happen until after a letter of intent is signed. But for two organizations to get to a place where they feel comfortable signing a letter of intent, there's a whole lot more than the words that are on the proposal that both organizations need to feel comfortable about. And so if you recall last time, we reviewed with you what steps would be next in the process. And specifically, we worked through with you, and I'm going to go through them in just a couple of minutes to refresh you on the kinds of questions that we heard from you we needed to ask of Regional. And we scheduled a conference call with Regional, which took place the afternoon of September 13th, which is why you have no summary report yet, because we're in the process of culling through the additional information that we have now received from Regional, including a full set of financials, consolidated financials and financials for every one of their individual organizations. And yes, Commissioner Pollard, to your comment earlier, Steve Hebner is in fact a CPA who retired from KPMG and headed up their healthcare practice and has audited many, many, many health systems financials over the years. So we are now better positioned with a full set of financials to be able to do just this next level of discernment and evaluation.
At what point can the financials be made public?
Well, the financials actually can be made public anytime because they were actually, as soon as the deal closed, then a lot of that information was made publicly available on the Certificate of Need site. As soon as Yakima Regional and Yakima Memorial or Yakima Valley closed their deal, then the consolidated financials.
Prior redactation now be made shareable with the public?
This doesn't have anything to do with the redaction of the original proposal. This has to do with financials that are now publicly available on a Certificate of Need website.
Apart from the Certificate of Need, can we use the financials that we got on the original proposal now that all of that has been settled with the Certificate of Need and share that with the public?
You cannot, Commissioner Pollard, because we have sent both to a public records requester and to the respondent, the RP respondent, that they have until September 29th, as I recall. Second, to obtain a protective order, and we must comply with that. We provided that to them in writing. As per their request, as you'll recall, they had identified that they wanted some additional time, and they identified it as proprietary.
Right.
So we have informed them in writing, unless they get a protective order obtained and served upon the district by September 22, it will be released. And we cannot release it until then.
But we have already redacted the document, have withheld the information that
That's
was
correct.
redacted.
Now, you're asking now, can you distribute or release the redacted portions? You cannot until September 22nd.
The end of the day.
The end of the day.
Is there an expectation that there's going to be additional redactions?
The 23rd.
Yeah.
I do not anticipate additional redactions, but there is, as you know, 4 pieces of information that were redacted. We have to stick with that. We're required to do that until the 22nd of September at 5 p.m. We have not been served with a protective order.
Very good. Would you let us know if we are served?
Absolutely, of course I will. Immediately.
Okay, so I want to move along here. So the point being, you all helped us at the last session, at the work study session on August 30th, to round out this list of questions, okay? So all of these questions we discussed with you. The ones that were added as a result of your input at the last meeting, you agreed with all of these questions that we needed to get additional information on. And then you wanted more background on the people. You wanted to be clear about whether or not they were thinking of any particular termination provisions. You wanted to know their experience with public hospital districts and their capacity for growth, given the fact that they have been growing rapidly. And so these were all the kinds of questions that we asked them pointedly on the phone call on the 13th. And we are in the process of summarizing that information and reviewing the additional financial data that we now have in hand. So that is where we are in terms of the information gathering. Yes, we will have the summary to you just as soon as we can complete it. Probably the biggest component at this point is that we need to have some time with the financials. Okay?
Oh.
So you're going to include the post-redacted or released financials as part of your summary?
No, they're really 2 different paths and 2 different tracks. We have a response to the RFP that has been redacted. Once September 22nd passes, we'll disclose that to whoever requests it and make it available to the public upon their request. The track that Sarah is on with Steve is to provide you this information, and that's separate and different and distinct.
But she said that she's waiting for the financials, did she say that?
But not that financial. She's waiting for financials that they've already acquired based on the transactions that occurred on the acquiring of additional hospitals. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 different sets of financials.
Well, I guess the reason I keep raising this is this hospital district has been so criticized for being not transparent. And there are people that refuse to come here because they feel they've been tricked because of the secrecy of this hospital. We need to bend over backwards to be transparent. And that's why I want to get these financials out to the public as soon as possible.
Okay.
They will be.
So I'm going to sort of defer a little bit. I will come back to your comment at the end of my segment here because it's very relevant. So really the next step, which is what we were contemplating here with you today, was really a motion to move forward with inviting Regional to present. And just a reminder, this is the kind of next steps and timeline process slide that we have had in all of our presentations. And this is what we reviewed with you that we would be doing today, voting on inviting Regional to come and present. The only thing that's really clarified since then is the fact that they did indicate availability on October 25th. So before we go to this motion, which I guess I don't know if we actually need to I'm not sure what we need to do on the motion at this point. But before we kind of wrap this segment, I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. I want to come back to this concept of phase gates, and this being a process, and a process where you need to move through each step in the process incredibly thoughtfully. And, for as long as Steve and I continue as your consultants, what we will tell you is two things. Number one, this is a business process. And that is why there are certain steps along the way that are really important. And it's also incredibly important to have just as much information as you possibly can before you move on to the next step. The next thing that I think we want to make sure that you all are aware of is that at this point, I think you may well have other options on the table or things you may want to further explore with other parties at some point. However, none of those options are options that fully meet your stated goals as they are currently stated. Now, if you as a board decide that you want to reevaluate and reassess those goals and rethink how important it is that you have another party who's willing to take on your revenue bond debt, and that you have another party that's committed to expansion of services in this community and not, just taking a lot of your tertiary business up the road, then, you need to just think through that very carefully. Right now, there's a lot of diligence still to be done to determine if what proposal you have in front of you is in fact from a party that you trust will be able to follow through. And absolutely, whether it's us or someone else, if you want to go down the path of reopening conversations with other parties, that is certainly an option. I just want to be really, really frank and clear that, from our understanding of why the parties that originally said they were going to propose did not, what you would come away with at the end of the day would be a lot different than what is being proposed currently.
Do you want to wait till the end for questions?
Sure. I'd like to wait till the end. So that is just really, all I wanted to say. I think, this is your process. This is your decision ultimately, what you want to do, how you want to proceed, and, at what point in the process you want to revisit. That's fine. I mean, this is yours to own. I just am suggesting, as your consultants, because you did hire us and we have some expertise in this area, that thinking really thoughtfully about each step in the process before you make a big decision like that is really important. So with that, I'm not sure really what we need to do, motion or no motion. If
you spoke on the phase gate, and because we are meeting some of the schedule, and one of which is the meeting number 3, which is in October. And the very last page is a motion. Of course, there's been some changes.
Yes, right.
Is this something that you want the board to act upon, to invite regional health to present their proposal at the October 25th?
We've done that already.
Is that what it is?
The motion was passed to
Right.
invite them as soon as possible. You could have another motion now that sets the specific date.
Okay.
Sarah
Yeah,
has-
there's a date.
Sarah has requested that you invite them on October 25th. You have already passed a motion, the body unanimously, to invite them and to not suspend the consultant's work or suspend those two items on your agenda tonight till after they've been invited. So Sarah can speak for herself, but I believe they would like to have a date set
said.
Therefore, a motion would be appropriate now to set the date. You've already adopted an emotion that says they're coming.
Can they get here any earlier? How about the 27th work study session?
September 27th.
25th is, 27th is later than 25th.
No, 27th is September.
Oh, September, I'm sorry. Okay.
No.
So I don't know that we know the answer to that question, although when we proposed October, the October board date was not an option for the CEO. So the work study in October was a date certain that worked for him.
So that motion could be made when you're finished taking questions and finishing your remarks.
We need to figure this out sooner than later.
So then,
I don't want this to be dragging on.
yeah.
You could propose a motion to ask staff to work with regional schedule and your schedules to identify a special meeting date.
Yeah, that'd be great. As soon as possible.
And maybe not earlier than October, whatever Sarah suggests.
Not earlier than that?
Not earlier than that. This is like a speeding train. We need more time for research.
Okay.
I don't know,
And
I get a lot.
we need to be in a position to ask our questions.
I thought you wanted to get, all right. And let's just do it October 23rd, that's fine. That's not good. I actually thought that you wanted to listen and see if there's any merit to it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So someone needs to make a motion with a specific date.
Are you ready for a motion? Are we interrupting your concluding remarks?
No.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we invite Regional Health to present their proposal at the October 25th work study session.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor?
Excuse me, as far as discussion, I think that should be held in the Snoqualmie City Hall. You see what kind of attendance we're getting down here in the basement, and it's been that way all year. Let's hold that in the Snoqualmie City Hall.
I think we can just vote on the motion and then discuss where the venue would be.
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll vote on the motion and then we'll talk about venue. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Everybody say aye. All right, now venue. Commissioner Pollard thinks it ought to be at City Hall. It depends on if City Hall's available.
Perhaps we can turn this over to the CEO at this point and let him explore. I think the point is we want to have this discussion. This will be the first meeting of the community with Mr. Gallagher. It ought to be in a place that's inviting and accommodating. When we used to hold public hearings, we would get 100 people, folks. But we hold public hearings now, we get nobody. And I think the locale is part of the problem. So perhaps City Hall.
If not City Hall, there's other venues like the fire station.
Fire station,
Yeah, and not the library in Fall City because the acoustics are horrible. But, we'll look at that at the fire station.
Yeah, the fire station.
My last contact, there is no audiovisual system in the
Fire
fire
station.
station.
Oh.
Okay, so where are we now?
Surplus.
Okay, that's what I have circled.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for
Sorry.
your time and for your patience.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, new business. Who wants to make resolution? I guess I
I
placed
move we approve resolution number and mistaken number.
5320917. And it's for, pardon? No. not yet.
Well, you're not moving, no action.
There's no action yet, there's public comment, no.
After the public comment, we
After the
take
public
action.
Right now, we're just making a motion.
You're having had discussion under new business first. It's, again, under new business action.
Yeah.
Discussion for discussion.
Yeah, I see, all right. So is there any discussion about the surplus equipment?
This follows standard procedure. We are releasing this to certain organizations that we've released before. There's nothing unusual about this, is that correct? Yeah.
No.
Is a motion in order?
Not yet. First, we're discussing the new business. Is there any other questions or discussion about resolution 5320917? Hearing none, we also have new business for rescheduling the November regular meeting and scheduling an annual budget public hearing, which we're required because we have to get our information in by November 13th, if I'm correct. So that would be the October.
13th would be nice, 15th is statute. But we shoot for a little bit earlier, just,
I was trying to get it in on the 9th.
Yeah, we got the 9th.
so,
Are we? Is that okay?
Is the 9th, October 9th?
No.
November.
November 9th for a
November.
meeting?
Isn't that voting day? No.
No.
Val, do you have those dates?
So the, regular meeting right now is scheduled for the 9th.
That's right.
It would work to have so what would need to happen is have the regular meeting November 2nd, 1 week earlier, and then you can have the budget meeting on November 9th. And that would allow time to get it into the county.
Madam President, I just want to comment that every year we are terribly rushed on the budget so that we give it only superficial attention. I'm sorry. But one of the issues is always the issue of the cost of living increase, the COLA. And I wonder if we might have that discussion in a special session, a work study session, in advance of the public hearing regarding the COLA takes some time. We need to compare it with the COLAs offered elsewhere, federal, state, and other hospitals and so on. And that does take some time.
Could we ask Steve to have some of that data with us?
Yeah, that data is fairly easy to obtain. We can have that, towards the end of October.
Yeah, we can do it at a work study
Yeah, we
session.
do a work
in
study
October.
session, we can give you all sorts
Well,
of.
yeah, but let's not double up on the 25th with the
Fair enough.
project.
Fair
So,
enough.
look, there's no reason why we can't schedule another work study. You look at the work study sessions they're holding in Evergreen, and they're holding them every week at least, and sometimes twice a week. And sometimes I think maybe we need to do that, and this may be one of those cases.
Okay, so where are we at right now with the date? Do we have a date?
Let's deal first with moving the board meeting date,
Right
For
now,
November or for
November.
November?
November.
The first Thursday is the second Thursday is the 9th, and then the 16th, and then the 23rd.
Yeah.
And we have to have the budget done by the 13th, and we have a weekend there. And the 23rd is the week of Thanksgiving, so,
Well, the budget, the 15th is the deadline,
Correct.
yeah.
not the 13th. And Tom, maybe you can help me out here, but I've noticed that Evergreen sometimes doesn't send their budget in until December, early December.
I'd like to know their track.
We have to held the hearing on the 15th. The budget is not due to the county by 12/1.
12/1, that's right.
But the hearing has to
Hearing
occur.
has to be held before.
So
the
it's
15th
the
of
hearing
December.
that's so critical.
Yeah.
But we could, if we still want to massage the budget, we could still do it as long as we get it to the county by the 1st of December, is that correct?
We have to have passed the budget
On the
as a
15th.
board by the 15th.
By the 15th, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, the
So
15th
no more
is a
changes
Wednesday.
after that.
No.
No,
right.
but so we don't have to get to the county go first, I don't know why.
Well, you can amend your budgets later, but.
Yeah.
But,
Pass
yeah,
it.
you don't.
Send, submit it.
Yeah, right.
On the-
You can always amend the budget.
All right, so
So
So the
meeting
second,
is-
November 2nd would be
Yeah, the.
Budget.
the budget.
To hold, no,
board
November 2nd
meeting.
Board
would be the
meeting.
board meeting.
Okay, and the
9th
9th?
would be our budget hearing.
Okay.
Okay. So
And
do we
that's
need
going
an
to be a
amendment? We do, don't
locality
we?
issue too.
So So we need to make an amendment to our schedule because we're moving our board meeting from the 9th to the 2nd. So do I have a motion for us to move the board meeting to accommodate?
Do we have a
budget?
choice, Tom?
It's, you know, if we don't do that, we're really gonna get crunched down at the end.
If
And
we have
thi-
no
thi-
choice,
this-
Madam
This is
President.
actually giving us some of that breathing room that you're talking about, so we're not in crunch mode.
Okay, Madam President, if we don't have a choice, I so move with reluctance because I don't like to see us change our date and time of board meetings. It makes it even more confusing to the public.
Yeah, I
But-
understand.
Therefore, I move that we move our board meeting to the 2nd. And shall I go ahead and say, and our public hearing to the 9th?
And fix the date of our public hearing on the 9th. That
Yes,
was-
and fix the date of our public hearing on the 9th.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's seconded. Do I hear any discussion?
We have no choice.
Hearing no discussion, other than no choice.
No,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous, it's done.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so we've done our resolutions, we've changed our budget date, we're now to public comment. And I told Bob James I was sorry I didn't acknowledge that he was here, because he was an elected official and we should have done that. We have a public comment?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
Scott, you're on.
My name is Scott Scowcroft. I live in West Seattle. I'm a former staff member, a former executive director of the Hospital Foundation, and a grateful family member of a former patient. I would like you, as a board, to perhaps consider reframing your thinking about regional. Consider thinking about them as an organization which is courageous, entrepreneurial, and visionary. Give them a chance to prove themselves to you and see if there's some chemistry between the two organizations as well. I think you might be surprised by the new opportunities that might present themselves if you think of them in an entirely different light. And I would like to also say that I think it's an exciting process and that David's approach to this process just might be enlightened. It might allow you to go forward in this 21st century where you need to do things differently and do things in the best interest of the Valley. As far as public participation, I would encourage you to think about using social media to engage with the public. That's another 21st century thing that people do. And I have a request that Commissioner Norris, if you could, well, I have a question. I wrote an email to you several months ago about the use of social media. Did you have an opportunity to share that with the rest of the board?
I don't know that I did, I don't know, did I? I don't think I did. I don't even know if I got it. You have to know too, I have not been up to date.
Well, this was like 6 months ago or so. So, Commissioner Herron, I emailed you a copy of that and had some additional comments. Did you happen to see that on your email list?
Unfortunately, I was not able to access your email, so I will
Okay,
look at that again.
I sent it to your commissioner email at
Okay.
Snoqualmie Hospital.
All right.
Would you?
I did not see it.
Okay,
Well-
we've already overstepped kind of the
Sorry,
rules.
sorry.
The rules are that we
3
don't
minutes up.
dialogue.
Oh, sorry.
3 minutes is up.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's partly our fault because we've dialogued and
Well, anyway.
I will report.
I'm sorry, Scott, it's my fault.
I guess my comment is perhaps you could share that email with the other board members. You ask for public input, and yet you don't share it when you get it. So I'd like you to share that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's no other public here, so I assume we're done with public comment. And that's kind of unfortunate, because I think the public needs to be here, and we all need to start reaching out to them. Okay, next we have approval of staff recommended affiliated finalists. as a new action. Have we done that? We
Did
haven't,
that.
we did that?
That was the invitation for them to
Okay.
come on the 25th.
And resolution number 5320917 to approve the surplus equipment. I believe we've already done that, didn't we?
We just talked about
You
it.
did not, you discussed it, you did not vote on it, as I recall.
Okay.
Valerie, is that
That
correct?
is correct.
Thank you.
All right, so, do I have a
move
motion?
Approval of the motion to get rid of the surplus property.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is passed. All right, so other,
I have one suggestion for Tom, and this is something that would like to have the board think about too. I would like to see Tom look at some outpatient surgical groups, outpatient clinic groups, to see if they'd be interested in obtaining a free lease, and I'm just hypothetical, of the small space that we have for a medical office building on the property to attract someone to be able to do or start outpatient services badly needed here for the entire valley that we're lacking. So I'd like to see some groups contacted in the next 30 days, and I'd like to see some discussions, and I'd like to see some groups come with potentially, I don't know who I'd really like to see a group of doctors come here and say, hey, we get a free lease for 10 years on this parcel. We can build a medical office building, and the only catch is we have to put in our surgical upgrades and outpatient services in the hospital. We can walk to the hospital. We have that space available.
Right there.
That's right. And it is available. And on a free lease, I think if someone was able to come up with the money to build the building, they could lease at $1 a year.
We'd consult with Skip about physician inducements, but I'll talk about that.
But what we would get out of it is an upgrade in our outpatient services. We need to attract that group though. And I really do want to see a group of doctors at least talk with us, approach us, and have them come here or whatever. I really want that started, because I don't see anything happening here that I've seen. And if we don't have that happening with an $800,000 deficit next year, we got to do something quick. So
I'd like to second that. I think that we need something. We're Pro-Alliance right next to Swedish. You go in, you have a day thing, you're gone. You get your treatment there, your doc there, your treatment there, your MRI, your x-rays, everything, and then you're out the door. And we need something that says when a kid breaks an arm, you can get it cast, put on, you can get it checked, we can get you, and if it needs, if it needs surgery, minor surgery, you can come back, we stabilize it, you come back, and you have surgery here, and you're out that day.
What I hear you saying is explore some Plan B options.
That's a good
yep.
way to say
I'd
it.
like to start on it right now instead of later. So I know there's a lot being thrown at you, but I think I feel that time is of the essence right now, the way I've been reading.
I already have a file.
Oh, okay, good. I also wanted to make a comment or maybe additional information for Tom to perhaps continue to reach out. I know that I have introduced you to Mr. Kemper Freeman. He is a very good, reliable, dependent source. Maybe establish that relationship and might be able to assist us in finding the doctors. Having served on the Overlake Board of Directors for 17 years, he would know a lot of doctors there. So I just hope that you can establish that. I know that you know of him now. So.
And I have one other thing, and if any of us commissioners are going to be approaching these potential other entities, I prefer not to be approaching them right now. I think there is a need to, but I think that we should talk about who does it and when.
Are you talking about this,
Virginia Mason or Overlake or Multicare or whoever,
We'll pass it on to them.
because.
Well, I think it's fine for you to express that, but very frankly, if I happen to be in a coffee shop and I'm there with somebody from Overlake and they said, let's talk about getting together, I'm going to do it.
That's
Okay?
not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, okay. But with respect to your idea, which I think has merit, I'm not quite sure about the location, size, and so forth of these. Now, there is a financial aspect to this. There's also a facilities aspect to this. And I would suggest that we look at this proposal and identify those spaces at the next facilities committee meeting, if you would agree.
I think we're a
And
long,
you're
I think we're a long
welcome
way.
Oh, yeah.
We are a long way from that, but
Right,
but
yeah.
it would that part of this kind of project would definitely come through.
I
It
understand,
It
but
has to come.
I would like to have this, since it's been broached here in a public meeting, I'd like to understand it better, just at the early stage, not wait until we've already got a partner or something. So could we include that as part of our agenda?
We
for
can
the
talk about
facilities?
where a project like that would fit on campus. Yes, we can talk about that.
Thank you.
But I'll just say we wouldn't have any specifics
I
in terms of
understand.
total square footage, but we've got generally an idea of where that would fit.
And also report to other committee members that this idea was broached at a public meeting, and we may be headed in this direction.
Very good.
So just add it to the agenda for the facilities committee. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or anything else? All right, Marie, this next scheduled meetings, work study is September 27th, 2017 at 6 o'clock, North-South Conference Room. And then our next regular meeting is going to be October 12th, 2017 at 6:30, same room. And do I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move we adjourn, Madam President.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor, is there discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's a non-debatable motion.